Hey everyone, Morgan here. So we're talking about album of the week, and for this week we're going to focus on the first rock opera. It's called Tommy. Tommy was recorded by The Who starting in about September of 1968, and it was released I'd say, fall of '69. Now, The Who, this is one of the classic British bands of all time. A real fun British bar band that broke onto the scene 63, 64 with a great track called My Generation. Features one of the most brilliant lines in all of rock and roll: I hope I die before I get old. Okay? And The Who was great as a singles band. They did not record these huge behemoth albums that told a story. They released singles that were great, and people wanted to go out and hear them and make lots of noise and jump up and down and dance. And it was a time in British history where we had two main groups of youth, the mods and the rockers. And the mods really identified with The Who. Now, Pete Townshend was getting a little tired of that. And he decided that he wanted to create a piece of music that was much more of an opera. Not the sound of opera, it was going to be rock and roll. But it was going to be a piece of music that told a story. Much like the progressive rockers did, like the Beatles started out to do with Sgt. Pepper, okay? Pink Floyd really did an amazing job of it with Dark Side of the Moon a few years later. Right about the same time that Townshend was writing Tommy, the Moody Blues released Days of Future Past and In Search of the Lost Chord. So people were getting used to these concept albums, or these albums that told a story. But none of them had approached it as an operatic type piece. Now, Townshend had a pretty terrible childhood. He was born during World War II. He was left in the care of some other people besides his mother and his father at times. He has what he calls repressed memories of being abused in that time period when he was pretty young. And he wanted to let all of that out in Tommy. Now, really brief synopsis here. Tommy is born during the First World War. His father was presumed, the line I believe goes, presumed missing with a number of men, don't expect to see him again. And his mom gets a new boyfriend, and then his father, Captain Walker, comes back home, and Captain Walker kills the boyfriend, and Tommy sees him do it, and his parents threaten him into never divulging what he'd seen happen, and he goes deaf, dumb, and blind. So there's a lot of story about his family life growing up that way, and his parents trying to get him treatment so that he would not be that way anymore. Doctors could not find any physical reason for the ailments. So the opera goes through a lot of stories about different folks that tried to get him to break out of it, a doctor that finally did, a great piece called Smash the Mirror. Tommy had become very adept at playing pinball. And it was not part of the original story, but it turns out that Townshend wanted a really good review from somebody in one of the British press, now a newspaper called Melody Maker. And the guy had listened to the original tapes and said, yeah, it's pretty good, I'll give it a nice review. He says, what does it need to have a great review? He goes, I don't know. And then Townshend realized that the guy was a big fan of pinball. So he put pinball into the opera, and it suddenly got the most amazing review the guy had ever written. So after he regains his sight and his hearing and the ability to speak, he kind of becomes this pop culture messiah. He has this big following, okay? I think a lot of that was based upon two people who were well known at that period in time. One was named Meyer Baba, and Baba became the inspiration for a lot of the pieces on The Who's next album, which was called Who's Next? and especially the opening track called Baba O'Reilly, which contained the other all-time great line of all rock and roll, "It's only teenage wasteland." And then the other one would have been the Maharishi Meshi Yogi. Okay, so kind of a character based upon those, and he ends up opening up this summer camp for kids, and just, kind of outlandish stories. But it was a really great piece of music. The story might have been weird, but it was a good piece of music. Now, when it came out, the Who were flat broke. They had made their career smashing their gear at the end of every concert they did. Great episode of the Smothers Brothers. Watch it sometime, where they destroyed all their equipment on stage, even broke a guitar that belonged to the Smothers Brothers. And they needed a moneymaker. Well, this was it. People were coming out in droves to see the tour that Tommy was performed on, and they performed the whole thing straight through. They performed it at Woodstock. It's just that with the way Woodstock ran, they came on at like 2 in the morning. So it happened from 2 to 4 in the morning, and everybody slept through it. Okay, but it was a great performance. They caught it on film. The drummer, Keith Moon, crazy guy. If you've ever watched The Muppets, the character Animal is based on Keith Moon. That is Keith Moon as a puppet. And at the beginning of the performances, Keith Moon, in this really thick Cockney accent, would grab a microphone at the front of the stage and say, "Have a little respect, it's an effing opera." Except I don't think he said effing. So they toured that for 2 or 3 years, made a fortune. It's really one of those hallmark albums that you just have to listen to because it changed music. Now, The Who retired in 1982, came out of retirement in 88, 89, and decided to tour for the 20th anniversary of Tommy. And a film had been made about it, and a lot of the people that were in the film joined for a few of the concerts. They did a great one at Madison Square Garden, and then a great one at what used to be called the Universal Amphitheater. It doesn't exist anymore. It's now where the Harry Potter world is, at Universal Studios. And it became such a sensation that Broadway did a production of Tommy, and it was incredibly well received. Pete Townsend provided a lot of input. At times he even played with the orchestra behind it. So I would strongly, strongly encourage you to listen to this album straight through. Start at the beginning, go to the end. You might be tempted to play this track or that. No, you gotta listen to it straight through. You will probably recognize one track called Pinball Wizard. And if not for The Who performing it, Elton John covered it. And Elton John just shot up the charts with that, did really, really well, okay? But it's a Who song, it's a Pete Townsend song, okay? So it's a double album, it's a little long, okay? It's really deep. It's pretty sick and twisted. Let's be honest about that. If you're in a bad mood, don't listen to it, okay? But it's a great piece of music, okay? Tommy by The Who, 1969. Thanks for joining in. This is Morgan signing off.